Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the launch of the Site Foundation Report on Incentive Travel in Europe. We are thrilled that you've joined us in the inaugural Planet IMEX Community Day. My name is Erin Goblish, and on behalf of Site, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. You can submit your questions to our presenters today throughout the presentation using the Q&A feature located on your Zoom toolbar. Today's webinar's recording will be available on siteglobal.com following the conclusion of this presentation. And with that, I'd like to kick things over to Hamish to get things started.
Thank you, Erin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome. And thank you very much for joining us for what is the filtered evaluation from the Incentive Travel Index 2019 results, with a detailed view of Europe and the two major source markets, Germany and the UK. Hopefully, we will sketch out a compelling picture of the similarities and interesting differences between incentive travel in Europe and in North America. The report can be downloaded now at siteglobal.com. You may be wondering why we are here to report on a 2019 index and how on earth we're going to fill an hour doing that. Well, don't panic, we won't. No doubt the probable plan a few months ago was to present this now at IMEX, go through the report, highlighted with some nice graphs what was happening. However, obviously the report research was done pre-COVID, so we won't be doing that. However, there are some solid takeaways that whilst you are busy screenshotting, we hope you're able to pick up on and then take something from as a platform and basis for incentive travel in the future. So on to today. As Erin just said, please feel free to use the chat function to ask questions. I will be keeping an eye on this, as will Erin in Chicago. However, please don't ask, when will incentive travel return? We are just pawns in the global decisions of our politicians, so we're not in a position to actually be able to answer that. But please do ask plenty of other questions. My name is Hamish. I head up the MICE operations at MMGY Hills Balfour, based in London, part of MMGY Global. Here in Europe, we work with and represent leading global incentive destinations, promoting them to European buyers. And I have a specific responsibility for the ever popular destination Dubai and their official convention bureau, Dubai Business Events. Meek is founder and owner of Inspire Me, a Monaco-based boutique consultancy agency offering unique and alternative concepts in full-service event management, DMC services, and live music production with a sustainable and holistic approach. Holly Mills is from the UK-based incentive specialist agency Penguins, part of the DRP group. As an expert in creating wide-ranging engagement programs to drive organisational change, Holly is a proven leader within the incentive travel industry and has built her career developing unique experiences across the globe, supporting organisations in achieving and exceeding their objectives. A special thanks as well to Netherlands-based Jos van der Berg for jumping in very last minute indeed. He's a seasoned automotive veteran with 20 years of experience in Peugeot and Renault and marketing communications, sales and brand engagement within the automotive sector. Welcome to you all and our thanks for agreeing to participate. I mentioned a moment ago the solid takeaways from the global report that we feel can still form a basis of opinion to the future of incentive travel. Some of these are, and these are from the global reports, that return on investment is still the top objective for incentive programs, that hotels are taking the lion's share of the destination spend, leaving less for creative input on the part of the DMC. The DMCs globally are not confident of their future, predicting a 9% drop in revenue capture over the next 5 years. But the overall incentive travel is in rude health and an upward trajectory. So looking at some of the highlights from the European report, which, as I said, you can now download from siteglobal.com, we move on to some of the questions that it's throwing up and the differences between Europe and North America being the two largest incentive markets. There appears to be now even more focus on the soft power of an incentive. EU incentive professionals appear less concerned about financial ROI. Jos, I'll come to you first. You've been at the automotive cutthroat end of the sector. Why do you think that is? Do you agree with the statement? And then I'll come to Meek. So Jos?
Yeah, I think in the automotive, it's clear that the main goal of incentives is about building brand engagement. It's depending on the purpose of the incentive. In the automotive industry, you have three different incentives: press incentives to introduce a model to present your brand. The second target audience is a sales incentive for the salesman to increase sales. It's a hard incentive, let's say. And then you have customer engagement, brand engagement to invite customers to a specific incentive to build a relationship. And the last one is more and more part of the full marketing strategy of automotive brands, because it's really important to create contact moments with your customers and to build your brand in the right target audience.
So Meek, just bringing you in quickly then, and the issues of financial ROI for your clients. What are you seeing a difference between some of the clients you operate with from the US and some of the clients you operate from Europe with regards to ROI?
I do believe there is a similarity between most markets, but I have the impression that ROE, so the return on emotions, is much higher requested than ROI. Of course, ROI remains important, but return on emotions, the experience given, that's also very important.
Holly, obviously you've mentioned in the past, and are well known for your feelings regarding that soft power, the emotive side of things. How are you seeing? Is there a specific UK theme to the demands of the soft power over the power of hard bucks?
Yeah, I was really encouraged to see that, and really pleased to see that it's not just coming from our perspective, that emphasis on soft power. I think engagement at the moment particularly is the biggest buzzword, and I think from a perspective of how you run how we put together our incentive programs, that's the key element that we want to focus on, and not just sticking to a one-size-fits-all method. I think people are looking for personalisation more than ever before, which I think is great, but making sure that there's a fine balance, we feel, between dividing the group too much and focusing on individuals and personalisation, and missing out the opportunity of focusing on the engagement piece and culture. So a bit of a balancing act between the two.
When compared with North America, the report suggests that European incentives are less luxurious, less focused around high-end hotel experience, and far more into the destination and its uniqueness and its authenticity. Anybody want to disagree with that? Anybody want to expand on it?
Yeah, I think there are differences between countries. I think in Europe it's really important that an incentive is really pure. We have to keep in mind that today, when as a brand, when you invite people for an incentive, everything is transparent. Participants, they show everything on social media. So it's really important to have an incentive which is not over the top. It's not. It should fit in the brand policy of the brand. And if you show to social media followers, for example, that the incentive is really over the top and everything is too luxurious, etc., etc., it's not the right link with your brand. And I think that's more important in Europe than in the US, and especially in more formal countries like France and Germany. It's really important that there is an excellent brand fit between the incentive and the brand that's inviting people.
Now, Meek, you work for a DMC or operate a DMC. Have you noticed a similar change? And obviously you work in a destination primarily, which is perceived as a very luxurious destination in Monte Carlo.
I have to laugh. Yes, it is perceived luxurious, but I must say as well, it's like a sustainable luxury. Because, you know, our Prince, His Serene Highness Prince Albert, is very committed to sustainable development and environmental values. And we see that as well within the destination. So for me, I would say, yes, luxury, but sustainable luxury, or sometimes how I see as well, meaningful luxury. Because what we see as well on the same thing, that people are really looking into real authentic experiences, but also meaningful. And then you can say, okay, transformational, but it's not only if you do a thing for the thing, there must be a sense. And what just says as well, it must align with the brand which is operating. And I think Monaco has the image of being luxurious, but within the thing, and I think in all destinations, we really look into what are the items that really can make a real difference and a meaningful experience.
Holly, luxurious. I mean, in the UK, there's a, you know, there's a very strong sort of affiliation that incentives are luxury element. Yosh referred to what we might describe as, we don't want to appear in the Daily Mail, fear of corporates. Where have you seen recently the incentive, the luxury journey change?
I think it's how you define luxury as well. I think that, again, not coming back to one size fits all, we're very aware that our market is potentially quite well travelled themselves, both inside work, having attended many incentive trips themselves, as well as outside of their organisations. So I think there is a need for looking for opportunities that are off the beaten track, and off the beaten track doesn't often have a luxurious 5-star hotel attached to it. So we're looking for more sort of boutique style, luxurious still hotels and venues, but they may not be the humongous hotels that some of the US guys are used to dealing with. They could be a little boutique retreat in Sri Lanka, for example. So I'm well aware that there's lots of new hotels opening there, but for a while there wasn't much choice to consider. So our idea of luxury and what we're putting forward in our programs has to really fit into that program and come as a secondary consideration for that destination.
Just on the theme of luxury. Sorry, Meek, go ahead.
Jump in on Holly, I agree, because what luxury for everyone is different, and where you come from, it's different from the US, from the UK, from even the Netherlands and France. So there's a big differences in each nationality, even if we're talking about Europe. And on that point as well, you mentioned before as well, the personalization. I do agree, it's completely important, looking at the details. And what we see is that, you mentioned before as well, authenticity in the program. So you see as well the trend that people really like to connect, really engage with the local people to get to know more. And then not something fake, but especially it's important that really people feel the authenticity of the person, that you really are able to have this unique encounter with someone who really can tell you something more. And that's really something giving the unique experience, which, yeah, you are not able to find on yourself.
Can I just ask Holly, can I just ask Holly to expand a little bit on, we had a question in regarding the concept of sustainable luxury. Is there an example that you could share?
That's a tough question. I think I might be answering your question correctly, but a lot of our clients these days are looking for more purpose around their incentive trips, so aren't just rewarded by that bottle of champagne or the 5-star hotel experience. They're looking for something quite meaningful and a takeaway that they'll remember forever. So we're challenged and pushed, and I'm sure, Meek, you're the same, you guys all experience it, but to come up with that creative concept that is, it may have a CSR element, it may have a sustainable element, it may have you know, an opportunity to pay back, perhaps even potentially using some of the skill sets within that client's industry to give back to a destination, which is really encouraging to see as well. But with that comes the challenge of, like I said, looking for the beaten track and finding a suitable program to slot into it as well. And we've, even the last trip that we ran recently to Thailand, we were faced with a situation of We want to do a really interesting and unique CSR activity, but we also need the luxury bit as well. So unless you're traveling for 3-4 hours out into the middle of nowhere to find that opportunity, you have to kind of there's got to be a little bit of compromise somewhere, that those opportunities don't just slot directly into a 5-star experience. So picking a little bit.
We might come back to this in a moment, but on the issue of compromise and luxury, one of the things that was suggested in the report is the use of low-cost airlines in Europe is growing and being used for incentive qualifiers. Now, I'm no expert in the North American market on incentives, but I believe that would be somewhat different. If anybody has a question, wants to make a point, please do. How do the panelists, and I'll start with you, Meek, as you know, with inbound events, and then on to Jos, with regards to events you organise. How would you feel? Is the air travel part of it? Does that start the luxury feel of an incentive, or is it just getting from A to B?
There's a difference between nationalities. I think for the US, the longer haul, of course, perhaps it's more important. If we're talking about Europe, it's a shorter distance. So I see as well a shift that people, we're lucky for that they invest less in air and more in the destination. And the same thing which comes as well, and then more to invest in experiences and other things. So transport, yes, there is a shift, and Europeans are more willing to take a low-cost carrier than a regular airline.
Yeah, it's also my experience. It depends on the fastest way to come in on your destination, and if it's a low-cost airline, okay, then it fits in the proposal. If it's not a low cost, but for example, a national airline, it's also it won't be a blocking point, let's say. And in the end, people want to be on their destination as soon as possible. So that's the criteria, I think. That's at least my experience in over the last 20 years.
Okay, just moving to one of the questions that's come in from Daryl Nielsen. It's obviously a collaborative effort to provide event attendees a safe environment. We are implementing over 140 preventative actions for our team members and attendees. What airport, airline preventative, sanitary, safety measures do you feel will be integral to providing the most safe passage? So how do you think airlines are going to essentially give us more of a sanitary environment? We'll start with you on that one, Holly.
I think it's a really challenging time for the airlines. It's a challenging time for all of us, but particularly the airlines. And I think in order for them to provide adequate social distancing on flight is near enough seems impossible from my mind. I think it would be more sensible to focus on the process moving through the airport, and my limited understanding of development of medical tests and checks before you board the plane, so that once you are on board, the airlines can focus on delivering the service that they so need to do, which would be very, very difficult, I believe, to carry out under the current social distancing setup. So I think if there's more development from that side, I think that will really support them, because otherwise it could be quite a while before we see airlines able to continue to fly in the way they have done in the past.
Meek, Jos, anything further you'd like to add to that?
I've mentioned you all read about Emirates, that they are quite advancing as well in testing people before boarding. I think perhaps in the aircrafts as well for the food delivery, things with them. I've seen some innovative startups preparing like plastic shields between the passengers in the seats, or one turning a seat around. I think we must see what the developments will be. But you think as well, I'm thinking only about KLM, or was it last year, I believe, Jos, that they already had the thing of changing. Yeah. Instead, don't take the plane, take the train. Yeah, I think if it's short distance, perhaps we see that a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's also the world in the last weeks, the world has changed a lot, but I think that in the near future it will change again, because I see already in the automotive that the brands coming from Asia are restarting again. They're restarting their marketing strategies. So I'm really convinced that in the coming months it will improve a lot. And of course, we still have a risk. Also, of course, we have the virus and the problems, but I'm sure that the world will restart itself also. And incentives will come back as part of the marketing strategies of corporates. I'm really sure.
Mm.
Should we expand on that issue then, as you know, as obviously that's something very important for the future. Are we fully confident that companies, and why, if we are fully confident, why companies will continue to push incentive travel? Jos, can you expand on what you just said, please?
For brands, building the brand is really a key priority. So brand engagement will stay part of the marketing strategies of automotive and non-automotive brands. And because let's be honest, the automotive industry, they doesn't produce any bad cars anymore. So the choice for a new car is fully depending on the personal choice of the customer, and that means that the car brands, they have to invest in the choice, in the relationship between customers and their brand, between journalists and their brand, and an incentive as part of a 360-degree media strategy is a key point in that marketing strategy. So I'm really convinced that incentives will stay part of the marketing strategy of brands.
Holly, can I come to you with that? And can you expand on where you see how employee engagement from incentives might grow from being just for the sales team, but because of the situation the world finds itself in at the moment, more of a across all levels of employees for companies to engage?
Absolutely, and just before COVID kicked in, we were hearing and seeing some really encouraging signs from our clients, particularly wanting to expand from the traditional sales incentive to an incentive that's directly linked to their culture and their value system, which I think is really promising and hopeful for the future. I think now more than ever, as I said before, engagement is key, and I think that we all appreciate that incentives are one of the very best ways to break down barriers between any potential barriers that you may have within your organisation, creating a complete flat playing field for people to come together. The introduction of partners, again, changes the dynamic altogether as well. It's a perfect opportunity to work on any key areas that you need to address within your business, and also reward your company and your organisation for their hard work. So I think I personally feel very optimistic about incentives having a real push once we're able to travel again, because I think that people have had a small taste of what it's like to feel confined and locked down. So travel will become more than ever more, incentivizing, in my opinion. It will change from becoming a necessity to something really rewarding again, which I think is an exciting opportunity for our industry.
Okay. Yeah, we should keep in mind, we should keep in mind that the number of media touch points brands are sending to customers each day is huge. Every individual in the world is facing more than 5,000 media touch points a day. So it means that an incentive is also a way for brands to have personal contact with journalists, with customers, with prospects. So it's really, it has really an added value to invest in incentives also in the future.
One of the things that came up in the report was slight pessimism from Asian and North American DMCs, but a little more positivity from Europe-based DMCs about the spend with them. one of the questions that come in from Rob Morgan from Gulf Dunes is, what do we think will be the key expectations for a DMC, and how do you think agencies or corporate incentive planners will utilise a DMC after the pandemic? Holly, that's probably a question mainly for you. Meek, you can answer some of that, but you don't want to give away too many of your competitive secrets. So Holly, how do you feel that as an agency you'll be utilising a DMC after the pandemic?
As an agency, we really value our DMC partnerships. It's not something that we're looking to step away from. Creativity is massively key. And I think the opportunity, I guess, after post-COVID is to explore any opportunities where we can support destinations where they may have suffered or struggled with their tourism in the same way that we have in the UK. They may present an opportunity there to address the elephant in the room and perhaps encourage one destination over another based on the opportunity to pay back into that destination. In terms of how we work with our DMCs, I feel that we have a very close network of global contacts, and we lean heavily on them for their creativity and their willingness to take on some of our pretty wild and crazy ideas and make them a reality. So we will continue to strengthen our relationships with our DMCs, and we at the moment more than ever are heavily reliant on them to keep us updated on the current situations within their destinations as well. So those relationships are stronger than ever at the moment.
Meek, your viewpoint?
I recognize what Holly says, the selection of DMCs, so that's good too. But it's important this period, I think, yes, to remain in contact, building trust. We're all passionate about what we're doing, so also evolving, using the time right now as well to specialize perhaps more in one thing, looking in new and different content as well, to be creative. And I think it's good as well, like the DMCs, always to be challenged by clients who are really pushing the edge and the bar to really make and create that unique experiences which the end users like yours and all the others are looking for. And within that picture, I do, of course, my thing is sustainability and inclusive. Holly, you mentioned before as well. I really appreciate that hearing that you're thinking about as well for going to the destination, and as well looking at who needs help. I saw in the chat box as well, Elliot Grant mentioned before, leaving the positive legacy. And I think these sustainable values as well will become, of course, more and more important in future developments. And I think that will be also one thing not to forget.
Sometimes in Europe, there's a sort of a reputational perspective that, you know, we've always struggled with the idea of incentivizing in Europe. It doesn't seem as natural as it does in the North American market. Do we think that that sort of barometer is beginning to change, and are we seeing our audiences beginning to better understand the true nature of incentive travel?
I think so. With the willingness to take on these programs that are directly aligned to company values, so that it is stepping away from the traditional ROI and you know the hard sale. I think it's much more of a challenge to align rewarding an individual with a place on the trip with values, but it creates an opportunity for us as an agency to consult with our clients on how best to do that, rather than wait for the figures to come through and that delegate list to then create a trip for. So I think that relationship may change slightly, and again that will also feed in with the DMCs as well, input, but making sure that everybody is joined up in terms of how those values can be pulled into rewarding individuals for their contribution within an organisation, not just on hard sales facts.
We've got a question in from Sarah Hosford. Holly mentioned that having partners on the incentive programme changes the dimensions of incentive travel programmes. In the report, the German buyers seem to show more of a willingness to exclude spouses. I'm not saying reasons why, as it's contrary to the very nature of incentive travel. Bringing your partner, though, and this is back to Sarah's question, bringing your partner is a big part of North American programs, but less so in European ones. Why do we think this is? Is this something that we see changing? And why might this be the case? Jos, I'll come to you first, having organised them from a corporate end point of view. Do we think in Europe we'll start to see spouses and partners being invited on incentive travel trips?
It depends on the incentive. For example, if you're organizing an incentive for influencers and journalists, I'm sure that brands are excluding partners. But if we're talking about a sales incentive to reward successful salesmen, in that case, I've always invited also the partners, because it's also important to have the link between the brand and the partner of the employee. So I think it depends on the specific incentive.
Ollie, have you started to see an increase in requests and for spouses to be included?
We've always had a mixture of the two, and I think there's pros and cons for both. But I think one of the huge pros is, again, I mentioned before about breaking down barriers and perhaps laying out a completely flat playing field for people to build on relationships that are outside of that business relationship. So, you know, the introduction of spouses and partners allows much greater communication, and those relationships continue outside of the work arena. So that strengthens, in my opinion, the incentive itself, because then it becomes bigger than just the internal incentive and the internal push for achieving, you know, these targets. It then becomes almost an elite expectation or an opportunity for the families to support and get behind, you know, as just was saying as well, get behind that person who's in the driving seat of making it happen. But it also helps to facilitate momentum and to build the reputation of that incentive trip, which can only be a good thing, in my opinion.
Okay, Meek, are you seeing any changes in the incentive requests that you've been getting regarding partner programs?
Yes. US is more traditional. From some German clients, I did receive Dutch and also UK, but it depends really on the brand, what they would like to organize, what kind of event. So there was a request, and we did it for like an extreme wellness activity. So the men were going to sleep outside in a camping space we built into the mountains, let's say. And there they said, no, the ladies must stay home. So the ladies of the team, of course, were there. But it was an IT company, but less ladies. So it was inclusive. They were all able to join, and that was a special reason, and they wanted. And then afterwards we had a similar thing, but then the ladies were invited after the other person was invited, let's say, to come following for the gala evening. But it does happen. Depends really on the mission, the brand, what the company would like to realize.
Just one final question about the sort of the makeup of incentives, and then we'll come and touch on some destination points as we have a few questions. This one mainly for you, Jos, and technology and incentives. Did you use any technology platforms, and how did you use them? The report indicates a decrease in the use of technology in organising and running incentives in the EU. Is that just an anomaly of this year, or do you think that that's a pattern?
I think the role of technology becomes more and more important, but even without technology, it's still possible to have a successful event. The usage of apps and the integration of social media campaigns, virtual reality, it's for a lot of brands already part of the incentive, especially when you're organizing an incentive for your social media followers or your prospects or your customers. It's the incentive is fully integrated with the social media content, sometimes an app or a virtual game. So that's more and more the case. And I think that also because of the fact that we are pushed to work on social distance now, that the digital element is even more accepted now as part of a marketing or an incentive strategy than it was before the current situation. So yes, I see that technology becomes more and more important as part of the incentive, not for the incentive itself, I think, because then the personal experience, the unique experience remains the most important element. But in the total strategy and in the corporates, for the brands, the incentive is in most of the cases part of a 360-degree media strategy, marketing strategy. I think technology becomes more and more important.
I said we were just about to move on to the choice of destination. We've had a great question from Daryl Nielsen again, so thank you, which is sort of actually connecting technology with destination side of things. To focus on the future incentive travel groups 2021 and beyond, do you believe incentive buyers will welcome live virtual site inspections and familiarisation trips by DMCs or DMOs, as well as venues, facilitate this integral part of the buying and planning process? What tools do you think will provide the best experience for the buyers? And I'll come to Meek to answer that one first, please.
I like to see someone, so I believe face to face. I would love to invite people to come here to the destination. Digitalization, yes, it will be important on certain things, but yeah, everything is possible to insert also for inside inspections. There are a lot of things possible. Of course, some of them we have to be as well implement more digitalization to be up and running, to have all the tools ready to be in order to keep up with that trend. I do believe, yeah, we must see, but yeah, that's coming live to a destination, it's possible. But also digital in a way can help as well in the beginning phase, at least to have a first idea of the destination and the offering.
Do you think that because of some of the issues with regards to terms and conditions that happened at the very sort of start of this pandemic, that people will much prefer to purchase through a human interaction rather than a technology interaction? And Holly, I'll come to you on that question. You mentioned the importance of relationship with DMCs. Mm-hmm. Is it really important for a buyer to have the relationship with a person at the hotel part? As we said earlier, they get the lion's share of the cost.
Yeah, I think so. We're certainly using virtual site visits as a stepping stone at the moment. It's something that we're implementing for a few of our clients to continue the momentum of organising their incentive for next year. So it's yeah, as I say, a stepping stone for us. But I certainly champion the human interaction, and I think as soon as we can get back to face-to-face interactions, the better. As a means to move and progress our events forward now, it works perfectly well, and it's again comes back to the creativity of the DMCs and of the agencies to make sure that we're not just sat waiting until we can all move again to progress these opportunities. I agree with yours that I think there is an opportunity now to expand on the digital side of things for the pre-launch and the campaigns for the incentives, because everybody's embracing digital so much more than perhaps they may have done before. But I think too much technology can be a thing too, and I for one am ready to step back from that and get back to the human interaction again.
And just on the destination point, just scrolling through the questions, this is one question from Karolina Polinska. What will be a key factor of choosing destinations for incentives? Will safety play an even bigger role? And will this mean a shuffle in the top destinations list? Come to you for that one, Meek, please.
Yes, safety and health issues for sure. And we're all working right now on protocols all over the world. So probably it will be hopefully a little bit more coordinated. My note for it, yeah, I hope people look as well at the sustainability index, because I believe it's also good to have a look and a choice within inserting the sustainability factor. and then really making based on the destination what it is and if it fits, yeah, health and safety and sustainability, because that's all linked together, because in the end we're looking at all the sustainable development goals which there are. So I think when you're choosing a destination, Holly mentioned before as well, looking really at making a real selection of the destination which is able to guarantee the most basics, because if the people don't feel safe and they trust where they're going to, even if you have a great good program, if that's not in line what you're saying, it's difficult to really have the experience of an incentive travel program.
Another sort of point that's come in along the same lines of that is, can you see a trend of clients looking for new destinations? As they've put, like mine in Belgrade, Serbia, maybe not a luxurious sounding city, but a unique experience. I'd sell it higher if I was you. Or do you want people to go to the standard locations going for safe?
I think it's going to come down to accessibility, and that will be determined by the airlines, I believe. But if we're talking pre-COVID, we're always on the lookout for the next up-and-coming destination, because, as I've mentioned earlier, people are very well travelled these days and they're looking for something different. So we absolutely champion tier 2 destinations and anything that isn't just the usual go-to options, but we are also quite led by the client also on destinations being incentivizing for them. So it's got to suit the right client, basically. But yes, we would be more than willing to explore any new options.
Jos spoke very eloquently earlier about the need to match the brand of the client with the brand of the event, and all of those issues as well. And how important is the destination as part of that brand extension, Jos?
Yeah, it's really important. And basically, every incentive is a unique experience, and depending on the audience, you try to find the best fitting destination for the incentive and for the marketing action. So if we are talking I worked many years for Renault. You know that Renault is an important car brand in the Formula One. For Renault sport models, and we went to Monaco or Barcelona or Monza or Spa-Francorchamps, because you want to have the link with the Formula One activities. For upper class model, I can imagine that Monaco is also a good destination. For Dacia, the budget brand of the Renault group, we've been many times in the Dacia Arena in Udine, which is close to Venice, so you could combine a very interesting incentive. So basically, every incentive was a tailor-made creative concept discussed with the DMC and the event agency, to make sure that it really fits to the marketing strategy behind the incentive.
So just in terms of destination, this is something else that came out in the report. In terms of destination selection, print and online media in our sector played little role in influencing destination selection. So what are the influences? Is our industry sometimes a little bit inward looking and forgetting that incentive planners are influenced by other sources, word of mouth from friends, etc.? So Holly, Meek, you both deal with end users. How do you think they sometimes throw that different destination name in?
You go.
Thanks. I think it's a lot easier to sell a destination when you have first-hand experience of that destination. Whilst our clients do look to us for our inspiration and our recommendations for them based on their brief, as Jos was saying, it has to be suitable to that particular client. We do have the opportunity to throw in some wild cards every now and then, which is what we love doing, because when the client takes a risk with you to go for that option, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing that through to completion. So yeah, I think it definitely helps to have the end. You know, you've been there yourself, so you can sell it more easily. We look to the leisure travel market for inspiration every now and then, because we feel that that market is a little more adventurous than the corporate, and often we find that what is trending in the leisure market tends to move to the corporate market once the infrastructure is in place.
That's really interesting. Sorry to interrupt. Really, all three of you nodded then. I remember a year ago, this industry desperately trying to not be part of the leisure travel industry, desperately trying to make out it's something different. But now we're sort of, because of the pandemic, or is it sort of actually this is part of the overall global travel industry? Meek.
Oh, one moment the line was frozen. No, not about the pandemic. No, not at all. You hear me? Not about the pandemic, because I saw the trend already before. The leisure market is important because also a lot of clients we have as well, they come from the leisure side and they look very much into that experiences, and what they have then on a smaller scale, let's say by themselves traveling, they would like to find as well in their own brand corporate events. So that's why as well, when we talk about personalized experience and off the beaten path, that often comes from smaller groups traveling or individuals, and that's what they like to find as well in their big incentive program. So that's what we see. And yes, the nice pictures are important and keep people dreaming. So yeah, we also hear that they find the inspiration, what Holly says as well, on the nice leisure part.
I think inspiration is also a combination of elements. For example, we see in the Netherlands, we see a lot of attention for the regions in the south of Italy now, Puglia. It's because of the fact that the cheap airlines are flying to Brindisi and Bari now. Many influencers go to Puglia to visit the region. They show everything on their social channels. They publish in the magazines, the newspapers, you can read about it. So it's a combination of new infrastructure, new ideas, influencers, journalists, and that creates content, and content inspires people, the marketeers, but also the agencies, I think. So it's a combination.
Excellent. Moving on to what is a sort of a cross between one final question from Jackie Wade and the final question I have from the report. Jackie's asking, do you think the group sizes will change to smaller groups moving forward for safety? And then, and at the same time, if you could answer that with the growth projections for the report for 2020 are obviously a little bit null and void now. So bearing in mind that sort of future guessing, do we see groups getting smaller, more frequent? How do each of you, and we'll start with Holly, then Jos, and then with Meek. How do each of you see the next year and the next 2 years panning out for the incentive market?
I'm not too sure that the group size will change drastically. We have a range of incentive trip size groups, but so I'm not sure that I anticipate smaller groups and more frequent. I do think that the need to travel and the need to engage teams will be stronger than ever. And I think after a long period of lockdown that we've all experienced, I think that will become a real key driver within that. I'm not sure, like I say, if I would predict any change in group size. I think we would probably look to see the same sort of size groups, in my opinion.
Right. Meek. Sorry, Jos, I said you second.
I do agree. I don't see big changes. Today we are in a difficult situation, but as I've said already, I'm convinced that in a few months the situation will improve a lot, and then we go back to the old system. Incentives are part of the marketing strategy of corporate brands. They are inviting journalists, people, and every time when you organize an incentive, in my opinion, 25, 30, maybe 35 people is the maximum that can be managed by 2 or 3 people coming from the brand. So I won't see big changes in the near future. I think incentives, they will stay part of the marketing strategy. They will be an important element of engaging with people for brands. So I don't expect any big changes in the situation.
And finally, Meek.
I echo what Jos and Holly are saying. I don't think that will change in the future as well. It's too far out. Only perhaps right now in this year still in full, perhaps there, as we don't know yet, still in certain times. Perhaps then there we have some smaller requests for groups, but from 2021 everything goes back to normal, I believe as well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, before I hand back to Aaron, who will do a quick goodbye to everybody. First of all, to everybody on the webinar today, please do visit the siteglobal.com website. You can download the European report, and you can also download the report that was released today on DMC analysis as well. My thanks on behalf of the site global board and the foundation board to Holly, to Meek, and to Jos for giving their time today. And also thank you very much indeed for everybody else for joining us. I hope you managed to pick up something that gives you some confidence for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamish. I'll definitely echo that. Thank you, Meek, Holly, and Jos. We appreciate your opinions and insights on this. At the beginning of this webinar, I did send through the link to where you can download this on siteglobal.com, the report. So please do take a look there if you want to have more information. But I do want to thank everyone for joining today as part of Planet IMEX Community Day. And there will be a survey that will be prompted at the end of closing out of this webinar, and we appreciate your feedback in advance. So with that, thank you everyone, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. That concludes our webinar. Cheers.